Firstly, thanks for making the time to be here at reasonably short notice, and we'll get underway when you tell me you're ready. All right, thumbs up all around. Well, obviously the move towards the commissioning of the Sunshine Coast University Hospital is something that we have been totally focused on for some time. Our determination right throughout this process is to make sure that when the hospital is opened, it will be opened successfully. And given that we're one of the last major hospitals to open around the country in the current wave of developments, we've had the lessons learnt from other places to refer to. And there's been many lessons there. And we're determined to take all those lessons on board and make sure that what we believe we've created on the Sunshine Coast, that is a public health service that people have confidence in, and the reputation is of the highest standard, so much so that, for instance, the last couple of years we've been oversubscribed by interns wanting to commence their medical career here. That's the sort of reputation that we've built up, as well as the quality of our senior clinicians, the teaching, the education that's occurring here, as well as the clinical services. So we're determined that when the university hospital comes online, that it is opened successfully and builds and enhances even that high reputation. So we've been receiving a lot of advice lately about where our readiness to commission is. Also referencing the time it's taken to commission other hospitals. And interesting lessons learnt there is most other hospitals have had their opening dates chosen about 2 months out from when they open. Ours was chosen for us just over 4 years ago, so it served us well. It's been a target that we've been able to focus on and ensure our energy and determination is driven to opening around that day. But given all the information we've got to hand now, including from our independent commissioning advisor, there's enough evidence before us for me to this morning have made a recommendation to our board that there should be a new target date announced as soon as we could, hence the conference this morning. And that is that the new target date for the opening of the University Hospital is April 2017. That will ensure we have the time to commission successfully. It will ensure that our overall imperative that patient care and patient safety at time of opening and beyond is of the highest standards. That's always been our reference point and will remain our reference point from now through to when the facility opens. There's nothing more important to us than making sure, as I said before, that the reputation of SCUH starts off appropriately, builds on the reputation we believe we have already, and that allows us then to make sure that our recruitment of staff continues to be such that we attract the highest quality candidates, and allows us to keep building on what we've already created. So that's the announcement this morning, is that the target date now is April 2017.
What are some examples of the things that have contributed to this delay?
A whole range of things. The construction is progressing. Anyone who drives past Kawana Way or Nicklin Way sees that. But construction's only one part of it. There's lots of complex testing of the building. In fact, some of the technology and medical equipment that we will be installing in the University Hospital was not even developed at the time the contract was signed in July 2012. That's the dynamic nature of the environment. So we'll be installing and commissioning equipment that did not exist at the time the contract was signed. So we've factored in that, the fact that we want to make sure that particularly our clinical staff have the time to experience the new environment, conduct simulated clinical care issues, medical emergencies, test all that out, get familiarity with the layout. People that work with us at the moment, clinicians who work with us at the moment that are used to the layout at Nambour or Caloundra, the layout and just the size at Kawana is, the proximity of different services to what people are used to is all different, just due simply to the size of the facility. And so we want to make sure that we get new staff, additional staff on board. allow our existing staff then to be freed up to undergo induction, do those simulation and other testing and familiarisation, and then the new staff obviously trained as well. So in order to do that properly and to have all the testing and commissioning, we're installing linear accelerators to give radium treatment to cancer patients, as well as a whole integrated system where not only do the individual items of medical equipment have to function, but they all link back into an integrated network so that the information on a patient is all gathered appropriately and accessible by clinicians. We'll be the first hospital in Queensland, first public hospital in Queensland that will utilise automatic guided vehicles. So smart technology that will assist in the delivering of meals and linen and other supplies throughout the large facility. So a whole range of technology that has us at the cutting edge. We want to not just install that, but obviously make sure it's operational and that our staff are familiar with it, and this extra time will allow us to do that and do that right.
You said on the opening and the timing of the opening that normally it's not decided when it might be open until a couple of months out. This was set 4 years ago. Under which government was that?
It's been a constant reference point for the last number of years, because the contract was signed on the 18th of July 2012, so there's a reference point there. But the issue is that under the contract, commercial acceptance is a term. That's scheduled to occur on the 15th of November. Hence, someone's made an immediate reference to, well, if it's accepted on the 15th, it should be right to use on the 16th. That assumption was made, as I say, 4 years ago.
Was that 4 years ago, they're putting that deadline on there so far out, with so many things to happen, building hadn't even started, I think. Was that done more for political points at the time and rather than the reality of what the end point might be, do you think?
I'm unable to comment on that. That date wasn't one chosen by me. As I've said to a couple of people this morning, it did serve a purpose. It allowed us to focus on a target date. We would have needed some reference point, and there is validity in that reference point given in the deed. Commercial acceptance is scheduled for the 15th of November, hence the 16th of November as a target. But now as we move closer to that very critical end of the program, we're better informed, as I say, through independent advisors, our own team, that date will not allow us to do it to the standard that we're determined to achieve.
And so the reason I sort of getting to that was because there's going to be criticism, probably with Jared Blay and Mark McCardle at the forefront of that, given they was talking about this a month or so ago. What would you say to them as saying, when they come out this afternoon and say, this is not acceptable, it should open in November, 5-month delay is appalling? What would you say to them then?
Well, I've used this response a number of times. I'm just a humble chief executive. I don't play in the political arena. But hypothetically, if others were to ask me that question, I'd respond by saying this is an informed decision, a decision based with the sole reference point of making sure that when that hospital opens, and one of the things I'd stress was that the opening date, if it is, and as I'm saying, moves a little bit, we're talking about a hospital that's going to serve this community for decades. So if we take a little bit more time up front to get it right, all that does is ensure the community is well served. This is about not meeting a target, it's about meeting a target as a date, it's about meeting a target of successfully, safely opening the facility. Reference points to other hospital openings, and I'm not going to go into them here today, all show that if you rush the period between when construction's completed and commissioning of the services, that's when things go wrong. If clinicians and other staff do not have unfettered access to the new facility for a period to ensure that familiarity, that's when things go wrong. They're the lessons that have been put before us. They're the lessons that we're determined to heed and to utilise. Not to do so would really put me in an awkward spot. If I was here after the hospital opening and it was not viewed as successful because we rushed the last little bit, because our staff didn't have the time to train, because that familiarity with new equipment or the testing of new equipment hadn't occurred, I'd probably be conducting my last press conference at that time, and rightfully so. So I'm very comfortable here today making this announcement because on all the information that I've got, this makes sense, It safeguards the community, it safeguards the quality of care, safeguards our reputation, and ensures that the hospital that the coast is waiting for is still delivered very shortly, but it will be delivered in the framework that we're determined to see it delivered. Safe, appropriate, high standard care.
You say lessons learned, do you mean Lady Salento? Is it a case of not wanting to have that happen again?
Obviously, Lady Salento is one that's been referenced in the media a lot. There's hospitals in WA, Fiona Stanley. Anyone that has followed hospital openings, there's a lot of media coverage of particularly those two, and some pertinent lessons for us out of both of those. And as I say, we'd be negligent in our responsibilities if we didn't take seriously those lessons and make sure that the outcomes, that what others have done before that hasn't quite worked as well as it could, that we fine-tune based on their experience.
Has the collapse of the water towers from late last year, has that had any impact on the opening day?
No, the water tower situation, they were thermal energy storage tanks. They were part of our determination, again, to use that word, of making sure that the hospital incorporates the latest technology and eco-efficiency. They were about holding a volume of water that could be chilled overnight and then used during the day to make sure the air conditioning operated in the most effective and economical way. So the air conditioning could operate without them, but not as efficiently. That's a separate issue altogether.
When will staff start testing and doing all that stuff that you were just referring to before?
That will probably, in accordance with the program, start by about August. But to varying stages. Depends on when different equipment is installed, when that equipment is linked with the network that will underpin the facility. That will occur over a number of weeks, if not months. Then the familiarisation, simulation and other activity will occur.
When's construction due to be finished?
Construction will be finished, and that's an interesting question, Kathy. It depends how you define construction. The bulk of construction will be finished within weeks, but the overall expectation for completion, technical completion is the term, would be in August, by about mid-August.
Given how critical you're saying, given the lessons of, say, Lady Salento and Fiona Stanley, how critical those lessons are, would you rule out, things aren't ready come April next year, would you rule out, or earlier than that, would you rule out a further delay?
No. Again, on the same basis that we're here today, it's patient safety and the quality of care. We will not see that compromised, and if I have to, and I don't expect to, but if I have to come back and convene another meeting such as this, I will, because our engagement of clinicians, we pride ourselves here in really working with our clinicians. We have an executive that sees itself as the enabler to let the clinicians deliver the high quality care that only they can deliver. When we went through the formal process of selecting the PPP consortia, and it ended up being exemplar, there was 3 shortlisted consortia. Our clinicians were directly involved in the interactive bidding phase with those 3 shortlisted consortia. I've commissioned, and that's been endorsed by our board, a clinician readiness advisory group who I've undertaken to ensure that their advice to me forms part of my formal advice to the board at the time I recommend to the board that we're ready to open. There's a few commitments I've given there that their advice will be provided by me to the board unedited and obviously therefore in its totality, so that our clinicians will have a direct role in saying from a clinician's perspective that the facility is right to open. If they say it's not, it won't.
Well, I think it's fair to say, Kev, that even this morning when we met with clinicians, there was a sense of relief almost that the pressure was off for November opening, and they think it's a much more appropriate opening in April when they're confident that things can be readied appropriately and safeguarded, that we should go ahead.
Is that because there was some delay in advertising for junior staff?
No. I mean, reference to our staffing issues, our staffing numbers, there's no magic button on staffing. Our staffing numbers have been ramped up continuously over the last few years. Headcount now is about between 5,400 and 5,500. If you went back a couple of years, or 3 or 4 years, you'd be probably 1,500 less than that. We have continued to ramp up. We've got a cardiac service here that opened, and most of you covered, I think, the opening of the cardiac cath lab here in, I think that was April 2012. We've got we've ramped up whole services here and grown Nambour, deliberately using Nambour as the staging post, so that when the university hospital opens, we're not starting from scratch, we're already in advanced position. Cardiology is probably the prime example. I'm looking towards Dr. Hollett because it comes under his medical services group. And that shows that we've taken thousands of cases back from Brisbane that would have had to go to Brisbane to have stenting done for cardiac condition. That's a service that operates 24 hours, 7 days a week. Our surgical capacity has increased. Our range of subspecialties has increased. We have been on a deliberate expansionary journey since 2010. There was a government decision made in early 2010 that gave us the go-ahead to plan for SCUH to the extent that we sought, and importantly gave us the funding and the endorsement to develop services ahead of the opening of SCUH, so that when SCUH opened, we weren't opening a building, we were opening a hospital.
So this had nothing to do with staffing concerns that there would be?
Look, every position we advertise, we're swamped. I think I gave the example before of interns. We were oversubscribed this year. We put on 54. Last year we put on 42. Nursing graduates this year, we put on 83. I think we had applications well over 400. Our senior medical positions, we're in the enviable position of being able to pick the best of the best. When I started here as Chief Executive, or District Manager it was called, in late 2003, a lot of our services, we only had a handful of staff. I remember anaesthetics, a resignation of one anaesthetist made that service pretty shaky. Our issue with anaesthetists now, we've had to find expanded office accommodation because that's such a large department. It's got a director and 2 deputy directors. Most of our other services, likewise, the sustainability and the critical mass of staff, and staff who have come to join us because they want to contribute to the planning of the future of healthcare on the Sunshine Coast, has meant that we've attracted exceptional candidates and therefore been able to pick, as I say, the best of the best.
I've got a question, and it might be difficult, so maybe it could be for either of you. Has it been disappointing to see politicians on both sides use this hospital to their advantage, whether in opposition or in government? We've seen both. Has it made the job difficult, or is it disappointing, but they seem, irrespective of the truth sometimes?
I've been in health for over 20 years, and the situation you outlined, Bruce, is one that I've experienced for those 20 years. So I have a habit of just concentrating on what my job is. I know what my job is, and that's what I do. The machinations within any democracy, as you described, are to be expected, and as a normal part of the democratic processes. I stay clear of that. I'm busy enough focusing on what is my responsibility, and the board chair makes sure of that too.
The decision being made today, you say it was an unrealistic, plan to open at the end of this year. How early did that plan become unrealistic? I mean, was it today that you decided that's just not going to happen, or was it?
No.
Was it months or years?
As I alluded to before, the further you get into the program, the more informed you get. So the closer to the business end, the more informed, because with the passing of time, you know where certain things are, you know what the challenges are, you know what equipment you're installing, you know the complexity of that equipment coming from, some of our medical imaging equipment will have people coming from all parts of the world to help install that. That's how cutting edge it is. There'll be people relocating from overseas to here to do that installation. As well as I say, we'll be recruiting from around the country and international. So this is big. I quoted our headcount of staff before, in excess of 5,400. we expect by time of opening to recruit another 1,400. The planning,
When's that recruitment process
the,
start?
the planning for that is well advanced, ready for the button to be pushed, but you do not recruit clinicians until you've got space for the clinicians to do what clinicians need to do. So if we were to recruit, and this is another basis for what we're doing today, it's about making sure that all aspects of what we're doing are aligned and make sense. We need to go to the recruitment, and as I say, recruitment's not some magic start line. Recruitment's been ongoing for a number of years. But the ramp up of particularly the bulk recruitment of nurses and operational services and other categories, as well as additional medical officers and allied health, will occur over the rest of this year. Now that we have certainty and a high level of confidence that the April date next year is a target that is achievable. The worst thing we could have done is recruit people ahead of time and then made this decision after they, people will be relocating their families to the Sunshine Coast. And that means more than just the person who will be working for us, who, in most cases, medical officers normally, if they're already in the public sector, either in Queensland or other jurisdictions, need to give 3 months' notice. So we've got all that planned out. We'll do that in a time frame that makes sure that the high calibre recruits that we bring here come and are able to join us and contribute from day one.
Could you explain what exactly could have gone wrong if you opened in November?
Simply the testing, the familiarity of our staff with the building, the unfettered, one of the main lessons out of Lady Salento was that staff, clinical staff, the staff that are going to operate the hospital need a period of free access to the facility where it's nothing to do with the building commissioning, it's all about service commissioning and making sure that the familiarity, the knowledge, the location of services, there'll be a whole new building management system within that hospital, probably again unique in Queensland. So getting used to how things operate, where to find different services, the reference points within the facility, as well as how does a team, say a medical emergency response team, a MET team, how do they respond, how do they, where do they need supplies, working out all that, even simple as stocking clinical supplies and drugs and other medication and the like. All that we do not want to have rushed, we want it done properly. The November date, if it's slipped, gets into the Christmas New Year period, which raises issues. We've got staff who only take leave at Christmas time, particularly in the surgical area where we do elective surgery throughout the year. Not too many people volunteer to, and Ratner is the head of our surgical services, not too many people elect to have elective surgery over the Christmas New Year period, so it makes sense for our staff to be on leave. So we factored in all those not revolutionary concepts, just common sense, practical knowledge to make sure we get it right.
Could I just say that my role here today is simply to confirm that the board had an extraordinary meeting this morning, and the advice that Kevin gave us, based on independent reviewers' advice, which we've been looking at constantly for months and months and interrogating in every respect, culminated in the recommendation to delay until April. The board unanimously supported that, again with an expression of relief, because they think it's absolutely the safest thing to do. I have communicated that outcome of the board meeting to the Minister and to the Director General, because that is our strong stance. And as some of you will know, that I was involved in the university opening, and things were far from right there. But I was convinced that we were going to open on time, because it was the most important thing to do. And if I'd had to teach in tents, I would have done it. But we're dealing with a fundamentally different institution here. We're dealing with people's physical well-being, and there can be no element of risk involved at all. They don't have the physical flexibility sometimes that the students would have had attitudinally, for example, in a university. So we have to err on the side of safety. And there is no doubt in my mind, or in the board's mind, that April is a much more appropriate date, fixed on the basis of what Kevin has talked about, and that is a level of sophisticated equipment, IT platforms that were never even imagined in 2012. and we've had to adapt across the last year or so to gain greater knowledge of those and their implementation, the training of staff, and the board is 100% behind this decision. And I have to say that in the moves I've made through the community over the last year, people have voluntarily been coming on to me and saying, I hope you're never going to consider opening this hospital until you're absolutely certain that it's safe for patients. We don't want another incident like Hospital X, for example, down the road. And they voluntarily said that. They consistently said to me they want it opened only when it's safe. No one has said to me it needs to be open on time regardless. And I strongly endorse that view that the community has expressed to me at least. So that's where we stand as a board, 100% behind the recommendations that the Chief Executive has given us, I think, on outstandingly independent advice in great detail.
Professor, I've just got a question that made me think when you're saying since 2012 there's a whole lot of IT stuff and all these other things that have changed a lot in that short space of time. So given those sort of things, hidden costs, this delay,